Hello and welcome back to Mystery Shots. Two kids, Richard and Emmeline, are sitting on the edge of the ship. Richard's father, Arthur, approaches the children and forbids them from sitting so close to the water's edge. Emmeline has lost both of her parents, and Richard has also lost his mother, leaving Arthur as his sole parent. Arthur tells the children that Emmeline's parents and Richard's mother have gone to heaven. Later that day, Richard discovers some naked photos in Paddy's cabin and begins looking through them. Emmeline arrives and inquires what he is looking at. Meanwhile, when Paddy returns to his cabin, he becomes enraged and spanks. Richard and Emmeline attempts to stop Paddy, but he punishes her as well. When the ship catches fire, chaos ensues and everyone begins running around looking for solutions. People board emergency boats and leave the ship. They roll away from the ship as quickly as they can to get as far away from it. Before the explosion, the ship quickly explodes into pieces, erupting into a cloud of smoke. As a result of the smoke, Arthur and Paddy are unable to locate each other's ships and drift apart. Apart from some wedding photos and clothes, he discovers nothing. Paddy and the children row their boat around in vain for an entire day, without food or water. The next day, they excitedly take their boat to the three-sided island. Paddy and the kids are overjoyed to have found fresh water and food. After so long, while eating fruits on the island, Paddy discovers a barrel of rum there. Richard brings Paddy a skull and asks him what it is. Paddy freaks out and immediately takes the children away. Richard asks Paddy why his father hasn't arrived while she is looking at the water. Paddy tells him that his father will arrive shortly to take him home. Paddy panics when Paddy notices Emmeline eating some wild berries. He instructs Emmeline to spit the berries out immediately. To make the children understand, he tells her that berries can be dangerous. Paddy teaches the kids some survival techniques. He constructs a signal and instructs them to light it as soon as they see a ship. He also teaches them how to make straw structures and builds them a hut. One day, while wandering the island, Paddy finds freshly ripped out flesh placed on a rock. Terrified, Paddy immediately returns to the safer side of the island. Late at night, while the children are playing and copying the wedding photos they found in the boat, Paddy sternly forbids them from ever going to the other side of the island. The children ask him about why. Paddy consumes a large amount of rum one day. He dances with the kids around the fire before falling asleep. The kids leave him there and later go inside the hut. When Richard and Emmeline wake up the next day, they go around looking for Paddy. At his face, they realize that he's dead. Full of sorrow, the children return to their safe hideout. Richard tries to console Emmeline, who is crying and has tears in her eyes. Emmeline begs Richard to take her away from that place. Richard and Emmeline pack their belongings into a boat the following day and head to another nearby island. On Christmas, Richard brings Emmeline pearls. This makes Emily very happy, and she kisses Richard for the first time. One day, while bathing in a pond, Emmeline notices herself bleeding, not having any knowledge about menstruation cycles. Emmeline freaks out and calls Richard for help. Richard immediately rushes to Emmeline. However, when he gets close to her, Emmeline stops him. Richard notices the blood and asks Emmeline how she hurted her left. Emmeline tells him she's fine and orders him to leave. Richard requests that Emmeline show him how she injured herself, but Emmeline ignores him. This enrages Richard, who tells Emmeline that keeping secrets from him is unfair. He tells her that she has changed and storms away. Looking at his body, he tells Emmeline that she's been acting weird lately. The two later watch the sunset together and wonders what happened to Paddy. Disturbed Emmeline, she says she doesn't want to talk about it and leaves. Richard tells Emmeline that there are so many questions in his mind about nature, which he wants answers. While the two are playing around in their hut, Richard and Emmeline notice distant drumming. They freeze when they hear the sound. Richard wonders what the sound could be, but tells Emmeline that he won't go to the other side of the island to find out because it could be the boogeyman. Emmeline succumbs to her curiosity and travels to the other side of the island where the sounds used to originate. She discovers a massive face, like a rock statue. Suddenly, a stream of blood begins to drip from the statue. Emmeline dashes back to her hut and informs Richard. She tells him that she has discovered God on the other side of the island. Richard is furious. He tells Emmeline that going into the forbidden areas was a huge mistake. Emmeline assures him that the other side is safe. She tells him she saw the face of God and knows because she saw him bleed just like Jesus. Richard is skeptical and warns Emmeline to be cautious. That night, Emmeline dreams that Richard dies after eating some wild berries. She awakens disturbed, and begins looking for Richard. Richard approaches her and comforts her. Emmeline begs him to promise her that he will never abandon her. Richard hugs and kisses her, but when Richard begins to go further, Emmeline stops him and moves away. When Richard touches Emmeline while she is sleeping that night, she wakes up and rudely sends Richard away. The next morning, Emmeline attempts to converse with Richard, but he ignores her. Emmeline follows him and calls his name as he walks off toward the shore and amuses himself. Richard yells at her and tells her to leave, but later a ship comes sailing close to the island. Richard starts excitedly waving at it and runs towards the signal to light it. However, he fails to reach the signal in time, and the ship departs. He notices that Emmeline had been close to the signal the entire time and wonders why she didn't light signal. Emmeline ignores him, which irritates him even more. Richard declares that he will not accompany Emmeline home. He builds a raft out of straw and bamboo sticks and takes it into the ocean. Emmeline smiles as the raft collapses and Richard returns. She mocks him and tells him that he'll never be able to make anything strong enough to carry him home. Richard remarks Emmeline that she is starting to look funny. Emmeline hurls a coconut at Richard, striking him in the head. As he collapses, she rushes to him and apologizes. Richard slaps her across the face and says, "Wish me luck." Richard returns to the hut and throws all of Emmeline's belongings out the hut alarm. When Emmeline asks him what he's doing, he tells her that he built the hut and would no longer allow Emmeline to live in it. A few days pass with Emmeline staying outside in high winds and storms. One day, while Richard is relaxing in the comfort of his hut, Emmeline unintentionally steps on a poisonous fish. This weakens her, and Richard notices her deteriorating health and goes to check on her. It dawns on him that if he ever loses Emmeline, he will be alone on the island. He begs Emmeline to be strong and stick by him. Emmeline requests that he take her to God. With teary eyes, Richard carries her to the other side of the island and places her in front of the stone statue. He claims he didn't really mean it when he said he wished. Emmeline is dead and begs God to save her after some time has passed. Emmeline moves and blinks open her eyes. Richard asks her with a relieved sigh, "How is she?" When Emmeline asks Richard if he's still mad at her, Richard says he isn't, but he's afraid of losing her after this incident. The two's bond grows stronger, and while they're eating fruits together, Richard and Emmeline start fooling around. They notice how their bodies change as they get closer. They are perplexed by the strange sensations they are experiencing, so they follow their instincts and make love to each other for the very first time. After a while, they start spending their days on the island like lovebirds. Richard notices that Emmeline's appetite has increased. He comments on this and warns Emmeline that if she continues, she will gain weight. However, Emmeline appears to have no control over her hunger, and Richard notices Emmeline's behavior and body. One day he awakens to find Emmeline throwing up. In the following days, Emmeline also loses interest in lovemaking. This saddens Richard. He inquires of Emily if she has stopped loving him. Emmeline tells him that she loves him, but it's starting to hurt. Richard, she says, can also feel her body changing as a result of this. She takes Richard's hand and places it on her stomach. Richard is startled when he detects movement within. With months progressed, Emmeline now has a visible baby bump. He becomes concerned and begins to wander around the island. While looking for her, Richard goes over to the forbidden part of the island, where he sees the drumming jungle dwellers for the first time, dancing around the fire with strange sticks and tools in hand. One of them is sacrificed in front of the stone statue. This horrifies Richard. He turns and runs as fast as he can until he reaches the safer areas. When Richard returns, he hears Emmeline screams. He follows them to see Emmeline, who is currently in labor. Richard tries to comfort Emmeline as she squirms and moves in pain. After a while, the agony subsides and Emmeline's baby is born. The couple is taken aback by the baby's arrival because they are unfamiliar with natural phenomena. The couple cradles the baby and brings it back to their hut later that day. The couple sits in front of the crying baby, wondering what it wants. When the baby starts sucking on Richard's finger, Richard tells Emmeline that the baby must be hungry. Thus, the two begin feeding it fruits and coconut juice, but the baby continues to cry. To console the baby, Emmeline cradles it to her chest, and this is how she discovers what the baby truly desires. The couple names their child Patty, and they all begin to live a happy life as a family. While walking with Patty and Richard, Patty quickly develops into a toddler. Emmeline asks Richard if he remembers their snowball fights, and then smears mud on Richard's arm. She tells him that it's freezing, just like the snowballs they used to play with the family, and begins playing in the mud. A moment later, they see a ship approaching, but none of them go to light the fire, indicating that they are content with this life and consider the island to be their home. Is seen on the ship, with Arthur now old, with age. It's revealed that he's been out on the sea for a long time, looking for Richard and Emmeline. He watches the family return covered in mud and says that they can't be Richard and Emmeline. Emmeline asks Richard to take her back to the place where they used to live with the older Paddy before he died. Richard launches the boat and takes his family to the island they used to live on when they first arrived on the island. Emmeline's memories return, and she refuses to go deeper inside. While Emmeline is waiting for Richard near the boat, Richard tells her to wait and goes to get bananas. Paddy picks a few berries and places them in the boat. Emmeline and Paddy board the boat. After a while, she begins rowing the boat around near the island. Paddy grabs one of the oars and throws it into the water, causing Emmeline to panic. She tries to get the oar, but it's too far away. Richard returns with the bananas and notices the oar. He dives into the water and grabs the oar as he swims to the boat. When a shark approaches Richard, he panics and begins swimming quickly. Emmeline throws the other oar at the shark, and Richard enters the boat with the one. They realize too late that throwing the oar was a mistake in his hand. The shark continues to circle their boat, making it impossible for them to reach the oar. As a result, their boat starts to drift away. They spend some time in the boat wondering how they will get to the island. When Emmeline sees Paddy eating the berries he brought, she panics. After looking at them since they were the berries the older Paddy had warned them not to eat, Emmeline makes Paddy spit the berries out, but Paddy had already swallowed. A few of them later, Paddy begins to close his eyes. The couple becomes concerned and tells him not to sleep because if he does sleep after eating the never-wake-up berries, they will lose him and will have no other solution to their problem. Richard takes the remaining berries and gives a few to Emmeline. Emmeline picks up on the hint and takes them from him. They both eat the berries and lie on his ship with arms around Paddy. Arthur learns from his crewmates that a boat has been spotted. Arthur orders his crew to immediately steer his ship towards the boat. He approaches Richard and Emmeline's boat and checks to see if they are still alive. Fortunately, these berries were not poisonous. The family was only sleeping. As a result, the children are reunited with Arthur after several years. Like and comment your thoughts about this mystery shot. And don't forget to subscribe Mystery Shots for more such content.